Okay. I think that probably everyone's going to be able to hear me okay without the mic. Thank you, though. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Can you start?
So first of all, before we start, you guys are the journalism department, is that correct? I'm super excited about this. And one of the reasons I'm super excited about it was when a million years ago when I was in high school, I was the editor of my school newspaper. And when I went to college, my first degree, or my first major, what I was studying was journalism. And so the ability for you to represent this school in a much more formalized process and have a school newspaper and school newspaper website is something that I'm very excited about. So I appreciate all of you. Did we have those people here last year? Did we have a school newspaper last year?
Yeah.
We did. How many times was it printed? Was it online?
It was online.
It was online. Okay. All right. Cool. And so, is there archives of that? Is that something that is?
Yeah, they are really bad.
There.
I have to check the website.
Great. I want to go through and see. So I'm excited about you being here. I'm excited about this happening. So anyway, you guys have questions for me? Is that correct?
That's right.
Fantastic.
Okay. If you didn't decide on this career path, what would you be doing right now?
If I didn't decide on this career path, that's a super interesting question because what I was going to do before I became a teacher and then an educator was I was going to be a lawyer. So I spent some time, I got my bachelor's degree from university, and then I spent some time working in the private sector, and then decided that wasn't really for me. And so what I was going to do is I was going to go to law school. And so one of the ways that I knew, because I was a young father, I had small children, and so I had to still make a wage. And so one of the things I decided to do was I would go to teacher school and get my teaching license, because in Oregon, you only had to do 1 year if you already had a 4-year degree. And so in 13 months, I could go through this specialized training program and get my teaching degree, and then I could work as a teacher while I went to law school. So I could still support my family. And so that was, in a way, the best decision that I've ever made, because I was on the track to be a lawyer, and then the first time that I went into a classroom, I decided that that was really my passion as well. And so that was what I was going to be, but the first time that I started teaching, I decided that that was my calling. That's what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. So.
What is the most important lesson life has taught you?
The most important lesson that life has taught me. I would say probably there are three lessons that life has taught me. These are mistakes that I've made that I kind of try to correct my behavior. I believe that life teaches you lessons most appropriately or most effectively through failure rather than success. So the things that you remember sometimes are things that you struggle with, the things that you are not good at the first time, and then you have to work hard at it, and those are the things that I most remember. The first thing is organization. I am a person who struggles with organization. My brain thinks about 16 different things at the same time all the time. And so even while I'm giving you my full attention, I'm also trying to solve the map scheduling problem that I have in grade 3 through 5. I'm thinking about the meeting that I just had about physics curriculum. I'm thinking about, these are all the things that my brain is processing. When you have someone whose brain works like that, who thinks about all those things, oftentimes organization can be a struggle. If you walked into my office makes sense to me, but to others it looks cluttered. There's papers in it. Those papers make total sense to me. I never lose anything. I know exactly where those files are. But organization, or a lack thereof, can oftentimes cause me to waste time and to be less effective, because I still have to find those papers and look for those papers. The thing that you will notice, which is a technique that I use, is if you go and look at my board, there will always be check boxes. So there will always be lists and check boxes. Because whenever you feel disorganized, whenever you feel like you're losing control, the easiest thing you can do, and it doesn't matter if you're a principal or you're a student, is you can start making your to-do list, your check boxes. What do I need to do? What do I need to do? What do I need to do? And just list them out with a little box in. And then just systematically go through, check. That has absolutely taught me some of the best lessons about how to be successful, because what I've learned is people who are successful make lists. The other lesson that I've learned in life is to try to speak less and listen more. Which is ironic because during this forum, basically I'm the only one talking and you were all listening. But in my earlier years of my career, I think I really wanted people to know that I was competent and smart and that I had good ideas. And so I spent a lot of time in meetings and in forums talking and taking opportunities, finding opportunities so I could let everyone know how smart I was. And as I've become older, what I've realized is that the really, really smart people, the real people who had really control and power, the people who were really running things, were the people that were sitting in the back row or the sideboard meeting and just sitting and listening. And they'd listen and let everyone else have a chance. And then when it was appropriate, they would speak. And then they'd sit back and they'd listen. There's a rule called 3 before me. If you are a person who struggles with always being the person who is interjecting, play the game where you stop yourself from speaking until 3 other people have had an opportunity to speak. And so you don't get permission to speak again in a meeting or a forum, or even with your friends, until 3 other people have had a chance to talk. All right? The third and last thing is that I think it's really important, and it's a life lesson that I've learned, to focus on and create priorities in your life. It's very easy to get distracted and to let other things that seem important at the time distract you from long-term goals. And so you have to create those long-term goals, and then you have to prioritize what you do. Because sometimes that prioritization means that you have to make some sacrifices. So you may not be able to do this on a short term because I want to do this on long term. A friend of mine is a teacher in the UAE, and they're struggling right now about whether or not they want to rent a car or buy a car. It's a very simple question, but it's a larger question about what is that person's life goals. Because if they're only going to stay here for the next 10 months till June, then it would make more sense just to rent a car if they're going back to their home country. That this person teaches in another school in Abu Dhabi. If they're going to stay here for several years and they're going to follow a career path, and they're going to do some different things, then financially it makes more sense to buy a car. Because then they can drive a car and they're not throwing away their money on rent, and then at the end of their experience they can sell that car to somebody else and get a couple of dirhams back. But you can see how that one little decision of do I buy a car or rent a car is based on a larger decision about what are my priorities, what are my goals, what am I trying to get out of this experience. And everything should hinge on that.
How do you motivate and urge current staff and students?
Okay. May I see your question real quick? I want to make sure, because sometimes I have a difficult time hearing something. How do I motivate and encourage current staff and students? I do that through empowerment. One of the things that I hope that I do that you guys have already figured out about me is that I really want to listen to students. And I really care what you think. It is similar with staff. I am not the grand ruler of this school. We are all running a school together. I had a staff member literally last week, 3 days ago, who was worried about, she had some great ideas, but she was worried about talking to me. She doesn't know me. She's known me for 4 weeks. And it was a concern at first. She was worried that she was going to offer me some input, and that maybe I would be mad or frustrated or wouldn't want to hear her input. What I told the staff member was that they should never be afraid, because I'm not running this school. We as a community are running the school. I'm not running the school as far as students. We as a community are making this school a better place to be. And so I think that that is the way you motivate people, especially if you're a leader, is that you look at not a leader isn't a person who's in charge of everything. A leader is a person who makes opportunities for other people to be in charge, and then to build capacity within the organization.
So what has been your toughest challenge?
Okay, what number is that?
Number 15. What has been your toughest challenge?
My toughest challenge. I think moving to another country was difficult, to be quite honest. In America, Americans don't travel very much because America is so big that we travel within America, but we don't tend to go to other countries. That's not part of the culture of America. And so I think that I underestimated, because I traveled a lot when I was younger, all over America. I went to Mexico, I went to and Canada, which really isn't traveling. Mexico and Canada are similar to America. And so I underestimated the amount that I would have to learn and some of the discomfort that I would have going to a completely different country, where oftentimes I would be sitting in a room and I would not speak the language. I'd be the only person in the room who didn't speak the language that was primarily being spoken. And so that's been, I don't know if it was my toughest challenge, but it's my most recent challenge. But it's changed my perspective entirely. I'm a different person now than I was 4 years ago before I left America and moved.
And how did you adjust to the challenges of that? But how do you adapt to?
Sure. So one of the things that I have to learn is how did I adjust to the challenges of living in Dubai, right? One of the things I have to learn is I have to learn patience. Because things function, I don't want to say more quickly in America, but it's a different culture of what's expected. So a good example is a very specific example. When I was working for a government school and I had all of my Emirati colleagues, the culture in America is if I have a paper that needs to be signed, I walk in and I just give my paper to you and you sign my paper and I say thank you very much and I leave. Because in America we're moving like this. There's a different focus on relationships culturally in this country. So if I needed my principal or my supervisor or my manager to sign something, I would come in, I would make sure that I gave everyone respect and I would shake hands with everybody in the room, starting from the right to the left and determining who was the highest position or who held the most power within the room. First, we'll shake their hand first and then go from right to left. I would then sit down and I would have some Arabic coffee and I would have a polite conversation. And I would talk to them for a while, and then I'd wait for the conversation to die down, and then after about 20 minutes, it would be appropriate for me to say, oh, by the way, hey, I really need to get this paper signed. Oh, Mr. Justin, fantastic, sign the paper. I'd sit for a little bit longer instead of rushing out, and have a little bit more Arabic coffee, and then at the appropriate time, say, hey, I'm going to go back and get to my work. That's not bad or good, but it's different. And so that's been one of the things that I've had to adjust the way I do things, because it's not that model here. It's a different kind of culture. So, questions?
What advice would you give to a teacher or student on his or first year?
First year teachers or students?
Yeah.
Okay. For a first year teacher, the first year teacher advice that I used to give everyone, as a first year teacher, you have to be realistic about what you can do, and how you do it. There's an adage called work smart, not hard. Okay? And so what I see first year teachers doing a lot is first year teachers tend to do most of the work in their classes, and students do very little. So they do most of the talking, and they do most of the writing, and they do most of the photocopying and grading and all those things. When I was a first year teacher, I had someone, a mentor teacher, grab me by the ear and she pulled me into her classroom and she showed me up on the board on her wall. She had this lovely mural painted. And on the mural it said, school is not a place where young people go to watch old people work. And I'll say that again, school is not a place where young people go to watch old people work. And that's the old model of school, where the teacher was the one who was doing all the work and was talking and entertaining classes and doing all the writing and writing on the board. Students should be discovering their education. They should be the ones that are active and working, and the teacher should be facilitating that. That's the best model for learning. So that's what I would say for teachers. For students, the advice I would give to a first-year student, and what I would say is probably I would cater this to a first-year high school student, so a grade 9 student, is I would really, really challenge a grade 9 student to recognize the fact that the rules have changed. In grade K through 8, if I don't pass my English class, I don't pass my English class, and I move on. So if I'm a 6th grader and I don't pass my English class, I move on and I'm still a 7th grader. Once you get to high school, if you guys don't pass your English class in an American system, we have to figure out a way for you to recover that credit. You have to take that class again. And we've talked about this, and it's really important that we keep talking about it because it's going to be a cultural change. There are no resit exams anymore. In an American system, there's no such thing as a resit exam. You do the work throughout the class, so Ms. Amelia has set up this class. You've got a significant amount of work you have to do. You've learned some information about journalism. You'll probably have some sort of assessment or final or something that your grade is based on. But your grade isn't based on one day's exam. Your grade is based on how you function from September to January. And so you can't redo your work from September to January in a recent exam. You have to figure out another way to get that knowledge, and that usually comes from a credit recovery class. Yeah, great
Have
question.
you ever fought against something that you thought was wrong?
Yes, I have. So I come from a long history, my family history of political activism. Was very involved in the American political process. And the earliest opportunity I can remember doing that was years and years ago. There was a gentleman in America called Martin Luther King. And I'm assuming that if you take American history, you at least recognize that name. And he was a huge figure in the civil rights movement in America. Because in America didn't always used to be so equal. So it didn't used to be the land of opportunity, even though they said it was. And so if you had a different color skin in America, you were treated differently. And so in the 50s and 60s, there was a massive movement to try to change that. And Martin Luther King was one of those individuals who was a leader in changing that, those attitudes. It was in the 80s when I was in school, so we're still talking 35 years ago. He was not recognized. And so the students of my current high school and I decided that what we would do is we would work with the administration and we would create a day to honor him. Now, what the adults thought we wanted and what we actually wanted were different. This is why you have to listen more than you speak. Because what the adults saw was they saw a bunch of students and they said, oh, they just want to have a day off from school. They want to have like President's Day or any other day. And they just want to be able to sleep in and not go to school that day. What we wanted is we wanted a day when students came and we suspended all the curriculum and we learned about the civil rights movement and we learned about Martin Luther King. Now eventually it became a national day off, so it was a national holiday. So everyone did get the day off, but before it was a national day off, at my school, we were able to have a total Martin Luther King Day that wasn't a day off, but it was a day filled with curriculum about the civil rights movement to teachers. And I feel pretty proud of that, and I can still remember doing that even though I was 14 years old, and you're talking about 35 years ago. But it was pretty exciting to see that type of change.
How certain you are in achieving your goals in the North American International School?
Very, very confident. I've achieved the goals that we set this year. I'm extremely confident. You guys are super bright as far as student goes.
Very tardy.
Great.
Every Sunday.
And for the most part, follow the rules and regulations. And that's a significant thing. I have a staff that I'm blessed to work with who are also very hungry for this school to become something greater than it was, something greater than it is. And you can see that in the conversations that I have with students and staff. Once you start empowering people and you start saying, we're all in this together, let's make something together that's great, people start getting excited about it. And they start changing their behavior because they're thinking about what does that look like for the school to be better. I don't want to be the principal who's in charge of cell phones. That's a waste of my time. But some schools are like that. I want to be the principal who's in charge of school where students are like, yeah, we don't do cell phones here, and we manage our own behavior because that's what we do. That's who we are. We're better than others. That's the goal, and I think that's really doable, really easy to achieve.
What's the most precious thing you lost in life?
Huh?
What's the most precious thing you lost in life?
Lost?
Yeah.
Wow. That's a great question. What's the most precious thing I've lost in life? Time, and this is a life lesson, time with my children. When I was a younger man, I was very career focused, and I spent a lot of early mornings and late nights at my job instead of with my family. And as I become older, I realized that that's something you can never get back. So the most precious thing that I've lost in my life, and unfortunately it makes me a little bit sad, but it's the choices that I made as a younger man didn't allow me to be with my kids and experience my two children as much as I could have. And that time is lost now. That's precious time that doesn't come back.
What is your teaching philosophy?
My teaching philosophy? My teaching philosophy has changed dramatically over my 25 years of career. So it used to be my teaching philosophy, I used to think that I was the most interesting person in the world. And so what I would do is I would stand up and I would just talk about all these great books. I taught English, right? So I would talk about all these great books, and I would talk about my love of literature, and everyone else would have a love of literature, and we'd all be reading these books together, and it'd be great. And I really didn't think I was going to teach high school very long. I thought I was going to go to a university and be a university professor. That changed dramatically because I realized not everyone has the same passion that I do. You may love books. You may like sports. You may like science. And science isn't necessarily a passion of mine, but I need to be able to recognize your passion and then grow your passion. So what my teaching philosophy now is that every single student, every single kid that I have, doesn't matter what your intellectual ability is, realized, every single student can learn. And every single student can learn at a high level. We just have to, as adults, find what students are passionate about. So what we do in schools is we tell you what you're supposed to be learning, regardless of whether or not you're passionate about it. What we have to change to in schools is we have to give you the opportunity to raise your hand and say, I'm passionate about this, and this is what I want to study. Because the reality is, if you're passionate about business, or science, or math, or history, all of those things still require core skills. You still have to be able to read well, you still have to be able to write well, you still have to be able to speak well, you have to be able to do mathematics. But you change the conversation to, you have to do mathematics because it's important, to, you have to do mathematics because if you're going to do it in business, you need to understand budgeting. And so let's change your activity so that you're using your things in real life experiences. That's my teaching philosophy.
What are your plans for the school down the road?
Down the road, I think it's really important to have 3- and 5-year plans. I'm not going anywhere. I talked to Director Harwood about that. That's one of the things when they asked me. And to be quite honest with you, that was not my plan. When I made the commitment to be here, I had to adjust my life plan. We had not planned to stay in the Middle East for longer. My first life plan, we were only going to stay here for 2 years and opt out. And then we decided we were really kind of having fun in life, and so we were going to stay a couple more years. So I was really, when I met Director Harwood, she talked to me about the school, I was on my way back home. And in fact, I literally flew, and I did not apply to a lot of positions, but I literally flew back to America to interview for a school in Oregon again, because it was a really attractive offer, and I thought that maybe that's what I wanted to do. It turned out that once I flew back into the interview process, that maybe it wasn't as attractive as I thought it was. And so we made the decision, Ms. Rose and I made the decision not to accept that job or not to get the job. But we were on our way back to America. And then once Director Harwood talked to me about this school and walked me around the school and talked to me about the students and the work that we could do, she convinced me that I should stay in the Middle East for a while. So if I'm going to stay here, I don't want to do it for a year or two, because you don't have lasting impact in a year or two. We've talked about this, so you have to do a legacy. And a legacy takes 3 to 5 years. So when I look at my plans in 3 to 5 years, if you're a freshman in this class right now, my hope is by the time you're a senior year, you have a full complement of AP classes that you can take. So when you graduate here, you're graduating here not only as a senior in high school, but you've already finished your first year of university. My goal would be that we have more programs available. So if you're not necessarily thinking about going to university, maybe we have CTE and business training programs where you can follow a different path, finding your passion. My goal would be to have a school where it doesn't necessarily function so much on bells and minutes, but you are studying when you want to study, what you want to study. Some more flexibility. That's my goal for 3 to 5 years.
So what's your greatest strength after Miss Rose?
What number is it again?
Number 8.
Number 8. My greatest strength. That's funny because you guys will do this with your first job interview. When you have your first job interview, this is the part of the job interview where it gets really uncomfortable. Because you're like, everything else I've been able to talk about my ideas and my experiences, and that's easy. But now you're asking me to brag a little bit. And that's difficult to do because we're taught that we're not supposed to do that. I think my greatest strength has changed dramatically. I've always been a good speaker, the ability to organize my thoughts verbally and to articulate myself. So that's something that is a strength. I've always been a really good writer as well. And so my ability to communicate via written language is also a strength of mine. I think what I have, a strength that I've developed is a little bit of humility as I've gotten older. So, and we talked about that earlier, so I don't necessarily need to convince people that I'm the most important person in the room all the time. And I think that that's a really huge strength that I've developed in my later part of my life. I can be a little more humble, and I don't have to be so confident or arrogant.
Last question.
What have been your greatest contribution to to society or school?
My greatest contribution, I think, in my career, which it will spill over into this school as well, is I've spent most of my career building programs that are that align with what's called differentiated learning. So for a very small percentage of students, school works very well. You understand the way school works, you do your homework every night, you turn in your school, you can play what they call the game of school. For a whole different part of the population, school doesn't really fit there very well. So you have one part of the population, students who are very, very bright. And school's kind of boring for really, really bright kids because they're not being able to innovate. They're not being able to be creative, they're not able to follow their passion. And then you have another part of the students that the traditional school that we run doesn't really fit the way they learn. And so they struggle legitimately in school. I think that my biggest contribution throughout my career, 25 years, is I've been able to create programs that have allowed not only the student who is really just good at school to do well, but also engage the student who is really gifted, and also students who struggle, and be able to make everybody, a higher percentage of students successful.
Yeah, last question. We'll take only one more.
What professional goals have you set for yourself you hope to achieve by the time you retire from being a principal?
But that be a principal here or just in general? In general. It's funny you would say that because my professional goals have changed as I've gotten older, because I have a different focus and different priorities. In America, they have a whole system of structure, and if you are in charge of schools, you are a superintendent, an assistant superintendent, a director, a principal, and then teachers, okay, or vice principal, and then teachers. And so you follow that career path if you want to. Some people just stay teachers for the rest of their lives, and that's fantastic. Some people decide they want to go into administration, so they're a vice principal and a principal, and then they become a director, and then they become an assistant superintendent and then a superintendent, running an entire school system of multiple schools. I was on the career path in America to be a superintendent. So I had been a principal, I'd been a vice principal, I'd been a teacher, I had been a director, so they promoted me from a principal to a director with multiple programs, and was on my way to the next step of being an assistant superintendent. When I chose to move here, I kind of put my career on pause and said, I'm going to come over here and I'm going to do something totally different. So I left that path that I was on and went that way. And again, remember I talked about the fact that I'm not the same person I was 4 years ago. I'm not sure that path makes sense for me. I like working with teachers and developing and making teachers better teachers. And that's not part of that path. That path was more administrative, like running things, systems, being like a CEO. And so I don't know that I think my career path is going to include much more working with students and teachers for the rest of my career instead of working in an office building and doing that, budgeting and that.
That's it.
All right.
That's it.
Good?
Yes.
All right. I really thank you guys for the opportunity. Any time that I spend in a room with people that are 18 or younger is the best part of my day. All right? It absolutely is the best part of my day. So thank you so much for allowing me to come.